Thank you all for joining us at one of the jewels of the city of Syracuse. On behalf of Superintendent Contreras and the Board of Education, I want to welcome you all to the Institute of Technology at Syracuse Central. This is a school that has heard the call for new skills and a new advanced marketplace. And so between the P-Tech engineering program and the career and technical education, as well as our traditional math and science, we are hearing that call and meeting that call to prepare the workforce of tomorrow. And the workforce of tomorrow and the folks here are clearly no strangers to my guest to the right of me. And I just want to tell you, Hillary, that we are so excited about you being in Syracuse today. And there's been a little bit of competition about excitement in the city of Syracuse. You obviously heard that we have not one, but two basketball teams from our fair city heading to the Final Four. And as I said, we are excited about the teams, and we are excited about you being here. And we look forward once again to welcoming you to the city of Syracuse. You are no stranger, and the work that you have done on behalf of the people here has been extraordinary, and we look forward to having you do more work for us. So with that, Hillary Clinton.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you, Stephanie. Well, Stephanie is right. I love being here in Syracuse, anywhere in upstate New York, and I'm thrilled to have the chance to talk with the panelists who are here today about some of the work we've already done and what we need to do in order to create greater opportunity for everybody in New York and across America. Now, I'm told it's not wise for presidential candidates to say who they're for in any kind of athletic contest. But as Stephanie said, the Syracuse men are playing tomorrow, and the Syracuse women are playing on Sunday. I was a proud senator from New York for 8 years, and I know the Orange need our support. And so this morning, I thought, I need to support the home team. Mm-hmm. So I'll just leave it at that, right? We've got some great New York businesses around the table. They do everything from making ice cream to plastic injection molding, and I want them to really speak to that, what their opportunities are, what their challenges are. We've also got some great dedicated public servants, and they're working hard to make sure that the economy is growing in upstate, particularly here in central New York, and that we're creating jobs and giving chances to entrepreneurs to help people follow their own dreams and have a chance to live up to their own potential. I worked with many of you when I was your senator. You'll hear that together we created the Northern Adirondacks Trading Cooperative. That was a really unique partnership, and I am proud that we were able to help a lot of small businesses expand their markets and sell their goods around the world. We brought together Central New York's hospitals, universities, and biotech companies to create CNY MedTech, which is helping spur economic growth and making this region a biotech leader. And I think that we used every tool at our disposal, and that's what I want to do again. For example, I support using the Export-Import Bank. It exists for the sole purpose of helping American businesses, mostly small businesses, export to customers overseas. And here in New York, the Export-Import Bank has helped more than 350 businesses export $10 billion in goods and services over the last decade. Unfortunately, my opponent joined with Republicans to vote against authorizing the bank, and to me, this was a no-brainer. It also pays back the money that we use to guarantee the exports to the Treasury. So we have to continue to work hard to bring everybody together, and I want to take what we did here in New York nationwide. If elected president, I'll invest $10 billion in a program I'm calling Make It in America. And that would be partnerships across the country, doing what we did here in New York, bringing together universities, businesses, local, state, federal government resources to support manufacturing jobs and businesses. I'm proud of what we did here, but we still have a long way to go. There's still a lot of people who need better opportunities, and I think it's time to live up to the promise of America, and that means ensuring that we provide opportunity, justice, and fairness for every American. And the best way to do that is to create more good jobs with rising incomes. That is my goal. And so with that, I'd love to hear from all of you, and then we'll have a conversation, and I see people in the audience who are also quite knowledgeable. I do want to identify my partner in all of this, Chris Balderston, who is with me. And Chris, as you know, is from upstate and has been deeply involved in the work that we did here, so I may put him on the spot from time to time as well. So let me again thank the superintendent, Sharon Contreras. Let me thank Donna Formica, the principal here, and Derek Dorsey, the president of the Board of Education commissioners in this school district, for letting us come here and be part of it. So with that, Mayor, let me ask you to start the conversation.
Yeah, well, let me just say I understand why President Obama made you his chief diplomat with that answer about Syracuse basketball. So I think a good rule of thumb is to start with the person who traveled the furthest, and I think if my geography is right, Christy, that would be you in Corning. So if you could just talk to us about your experience with Hillary Clinton as a senator and the amazing work that Corning does, not just in New York State, but of course across the world.
Thank you so much, Mayor. My name is Christy, and I'm happy to be here today to share some of Corning's story with all of you. For those of you that don't know, we're a 160-year-old company that was founded in New York and continues to be headquartered in New York State, and we're a world leader in ceramic and glass specialty materials. And we like to say that we invent things and we make them. And our story with Secretary Clinton began when she was our senator, and we had invented a filter for diesel vehicles. These are trucks, school buses, diesel trucks on the road, and we shared that technology with Secretary Clinton when she was our senator. And she was as moved by we were about what the potential was for how this technology could clean the particulate matter and soot from the emissions that were being inhaled by students on school buses, citizens around these vehicles. She then led the passing of legislation to provide originally $5 million to retrofit school buses. 450,000 school buses were retrofitted. It was such a successful program, she then led the passing of a second bipartisan legislation to clean diesel air and make additional monies available to retrofit all diesel vehicles in the United States. This led to over $500 million being made available, matched by private sector, over $1.5 billion invested to retrofit these vehicles. Following this successful legislation that she led, the EPA adopted this as the standard. They have reported that this technology has resulted in 1,700 premature deaths being avoided, over $11 billion in savings in health costs. And then what has that meant for Corning and New York State and employment is we were then able to take a technology we invented. We made originally a $250 million investment in a facility, plus our innovation dollars. We've expanded 3 times. We've now got a total of $1 billion between innovation and manufacturing capital invested. We have over 700 high-wage manufacturing high-tech jobs here in New York State, and we export products from this facility in Corning, New York to Europe and Asia. And that was all really possible with this strong partnership that Hillary led with Corning, with our community, and with the federal government. I think is a great example of her leadership in these areas.
Let's give Corning a round of applause, because what I really appreciate about working with Corning, and as Christy said, they invent things, they invest a lot in research, which we've got to do more of in America. And we've got great institutions of higher education across New York, right here in Syracuse, a clear example. So they invent, and then they make. And one of the challenges I was trying to figure out how to help meet was the rising asthma incidence of kids in New York. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is they were on school buses breathing the particulates, being exhausted by the diesel engines. And so trying to figure out how you solve one problem, which led to my finding out that Corning had already solved it but didn't have a market for it, led to doing what Christy had said, which is, bringing together people, Republicans and Democrats, to understand that this would be a great way of keeping kids healthier, keeping the air cleaner, and for us in New York, putting 700 people to work in good, high-paying jobs. So it's an example of the partnership I'm talking about when I'm touting, make it in America, because it's not only making something, but for individuals to make it as well, because they are part of, doing this work together. So Corning is such a great American company, and I'm so proud that I've been able to partner with you over these years, and look forward to supporting the work you do going forward. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you. And so, Joanne, how about extreme molding in Albany? Why don't you tell us your story?
Extreme Molding was established in 2002, and we're a 100% owned manufacturing company. We perform injection molding with silicone and plastic. Our primary lines are female, infant, and pet care products. At the time, Senator Clinton visited the Watervliet Arsenal, where we are a private tenant, one of about 9 private tenants. And I think the base was possibly on the list for being closed. And Senator Clinton was very influential in convincing everyone that the arsenal itself and the companies within had a great future. And it was a dynamic speech, I remember it, and it worked very effectively, because after that speech, we were allowed to expand our operation, which there was some resistance to that. And since that visit, we have grown 400%, and we've hired over 50 people. What's interesting is the manufacturing hires we've made are primarily due to reshoring. We have been able to bring companies back to the United States from Asia. Again, primarily because we're talking about female and infant healthcare products that moms don't want to put products in their babies' mouths made overseas. In fact, many of the products we make, gives me great joy to watch pallets of product going out of our plant that say headed for Taiwan, because many of the Asian moms do not want to use products made in their own country because of quality concerns. We brought a lot of these jobs back by investing our own money with potential customers, because the barrier to bring them back is pretty high. Our cost to get into manufacturing once they've been in Asia is formidable. So we've invested our own money. It would be wonderful to have some assistance with that in the future, pledging jobs in return for every job we reshore to this country. We also see the need for significant training programs. Manufacturing isn't seen as a glorious industry. I don't know why. I've been in it all my life. I love it. But it doesn't seem to have the allure that it used to have. And it's a wonderful occupation. It makes me very proud every day to see product going out the door that consumers are going to be using. So some training help there, as well as some possible additional help with expansion and equipment purchases to continue to grow our business.
Well, I'm so glad that Joanne is here because what she just said is really important for people to understand. There are a lot of voices in our country who don't think we can bring manufacturing back, that we can't grow manufacturing in America, that we've just lost that opportunity due to historic and global forces. Well, I just disagree. And I think what you heard Joanne say was important on several counts. Number one, we had to convince people at Watervliet in Albany that this company could expand if given the chance to do that. And really, it was the company that did it. I was sort of the cheerleader, but it worked. So you got more space to grow into to demonstrate that your capacity could handle additional work. Secondly, I think the reshoring potential is enormous in America. A lot of companies took jobs, sent them overseas, and they are now running into a lot of rising costs, labor costs, energy costs, production costs, and their transportation costs to reship the kinds of products that are being made are really putting them at a disadvantage. So on just the numbers, I think there are some great arguments we can make. And one of the points in my $10 billion Make It in America agenda for my presidency is basically to penalize companies that want to ship jobs overseas, make them have to, number one, if they ever got any federal, state, local help of any sort, tax abatements, other kinds of government taxpayer investments, they're going to have to pay them all back. And then secondly, if they do pick up and leave, we're going to slap them with a big exit tax. So we're going to get a pool of money that we then can use to really push the numbers even better for reshoring. And then the final point Joanne made, which I want to underscore, just as we're seeing an increasing interest in locally sourced food, and we'll get to my friend Roxy and everybody who's been doing this in a minute, there is now a growing concern about quality for a lot of products. And baby products are at the top of the list because we do have tougher quality standards. So what we try to do on the front end may cost a little bit more because we try to make sure that we do have the training, we do have the support. But in the long term, it's a real selling point. And we've got to do more on training, Joanne, and I want to just make a big pitch. This school is part of the future.
Absolutely.
We have 1.2 million jobs in America that are not being filled right now. These are $40, $50, $60, $70,000 a year jobs, and I see Christy nodding. We can't fill them because we don't have enough machinists and tool and die makers and welders, people who do high-quality, skilled work. So we have to put more resources into training. And we also, and I love your word, Joanne, we have to lift the allure of advanced manufacturing jobs and the skills they require. So you just really hit some of my most important concerns, and I thank you for what you are demonstrating can be done.
Could I just ask, I was interested in when Joanne said that they could use financial help. And you hear a lot about the Import-Export Bank. It's really become a political football. And your thoughts on how the Import-Export Bank could help manufacturers, people around this table, people in this country?
Absolutely. As I said, and I want to repeat this, the Export-Import Bank has already helped more than 350 businesses in New York export $10 billion worth of goods and services in the last decade. And Stephanie's absolutely right. It's a tool that we have to make available to our manufacturers and producers because every country we compete with does that and more. And I just go crazy when I hear Senator Sanders and the Tea Party Republicans railing against the Export-Import Bank like it's some kind of evil presence. In fact, it gives us a competitive advantage. Why would we walk away from our manufacturers, our hardworking Americans, and let other countries in Europe and Asia really subsidize all of their exporters so that they can undercut our markets? I'm not going to let that happen. So we're going to look not only to make sure the Export-Import Bank is working, we're going to look for every tool we can possibly use to give advantages to our manufacturers, to get to that manufacturing manufacturing renaissance, Stephanie, that I know you've talked about, that you believe in, that I think is possible. You know, people can tell you what they're against all day long. What are they for? And what are they going to do? And do they have a track record of getting results? I think that should be the way people judge who the next president they want to see in the Oval Office is, because at the end of the day, producing results is really what it's all about. And I want to see more good-paying jobs with rising incomes, and we're going to go right at it, and I know we can get results.
Well, I'm going to break my own rule and defer to Laura Miller, who, the reason that I have become a proselytizer about advanced manufacturing is because I've been smart enough to listen to Laura and her stories. And those of you in this community know that there is no better advocate and stronger advocate for advanced manufacturing and what we in Syracuse and in Central New York have the potential to do. So, Laura, if you could just kind of share with us your story and Darko's story.
Sure. We've been in business 40 years, and we started our business in a regional sourcing program, and we started making parts for Carrier Corp and some of the local big names that we had around here. And I've had the advantage of sitting and watching so much happen in the economy throughout the years, and I've watched as those companies moved away, a lot of the opportunities didn't exactly disappear the way the way we anticipated. So we make 5,000 components, widgets. You saw some of our widgets. and we do precision machining. It's a subtractive process. And we continue to thrive despite the cycles and despite some of the shifting, because the world still needs people to make things, right? We don't design, we make. And we rely on customers to do the design, and we support the customers. So we have decided, or we have chased opportunities that end up they're regionally based, and then they end up all over the world. So we're part of this global value chain now. And that's what's really exciting to me, because as you've mentioned, the world is looking to reshore. Multinational companies are looking to do that, and there's more than just numbers involved. There's those poor people in the mid-level in purchasing departments, supply chain managers, they're tired. They're tired of managing the aggravation and the chaos and the stress of dealing with a supply chain that's scattered all over the world. They're ready to bring it in. So any initiative that encourages, seizes upon this moment, is heading in the right direction. It really is.
That is so exciting. So can you describe, so you now are you're making what is designed and requested by your customers.
Correct.
How many people do you currently employ?
We have 32 right now.
Okay. And what is the kind of skills you're looking for in your employees to be able to kind of meet the variety of requests that come from your customers?
Well, we have historically tended to bring people in at entry level and develop our skills in-house. So we really look for potential, human potential. We look for people with curiosity, people who ask questions. Believe it or not, one of the biggest predictors for success and advancement is whether or not someone's a car geek. That's what I've observed throughout the years. So I can't really answer that question, but I'm very interested in the question. And I think if we ask the right question in the beginning, that would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see, Chris is smiling next to you, because what you said about opportunities didn't disappear is what we believed and what we saw.
Right.
Some of the big names did go. I think we know that. We can see it. But there were still so many opportunities that you said you had to chase, and you did. How did you do that?
Well, a lot of times we didn't have to chase too hard. So some of our OEMs, our original equipment manufacturers, would move to the south, but we still had the relationship, so we kept it alive. Sometimes just distribution companies would handle the commodity line, and we had those relationships. Sometimes we formed new relationships just by traveling down the road. Again, it's situational.
Right.
It's situational.
I'm so glad you're here to tell us about what you're doing. That's a very good story. Thank you so much, Laura.
And we are focusing on bringing the next generation up, right? We're ramping up. We're coming out of recession, so we're trying to attract young people to the field. And so I think part of that is, we got to make it sexy again.
Got to make it sexy.
Yeah, we do.
I agree with that.
So if you could maybe have one of your Hollywood friends like redo Flashdance, that would be great. It would just
You
be
know what?
great.
I don't think that's a silly idea.
Seriously.
Seriously, because in talking to a lot of manufacturers and technical education sites like this one, they say the biggest problem is that a lot of parents don't encourage their kids to go into advanced manufacturing, even though if they get the skills, they can make a really good living at it. So we've got to lift up those jobs, and we've got to, have some TV shows about them and have some characters about them. And Flashdance is a great suggestion, because we've got to make it, as you say, sexy. We've got to somehow convey all the opportunities that are out there through what you do and what Joanne does and what's done at Corning and elsewhere. So that's exactly on point.
Yeah, we just broke up into smaller pieces.
Yeah.
We just have to kind of
You have to
tie it all
aggregate
back
that.
together. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Laura.
And let me just bolster what Laura said. We're hearing that over and over again at the sort of grassroots level, where we're hearing manufacturers say, we need the skilled workforce, our workforce is aging out, and we need the people who have the ability to do this work, in addition to also have the technology background, because that's also been a revolution that we all know in this. And so it's why we're so pleased that you could come here to the Institute of Technology, because we're doing both. I say we, I'm going to claim credit for it. We, the royal we, are doing both, educating children in making sure that they have the basics in math and science and engineering, also giving them a background. We have the first drone program in the United States in a high school, and I was told that the students figured out how they could figure out what was going on the roof. They said, why don't we just fly one of our drones up there and look and see why it's leaking. So we are doing that here, and you're hearing that everywhere I travel. Everybody says there is lots of opportunity for a good, high-quality life. I want to next move to Roxana, because I know once she talks about her product, everybody's going to forget everything else, because it's such a fantastic product.
I hope
So-
you're right.
I think I am.
All right. I'm Roxana Holber, and I co-own Mercer's Ice Cream in Boonville, New York, with my niece Ruth. We make wine ice cream, Mercer's Wine Ice Cream. We're the only commercial maker of wine ice cream in the world, in Boonville, New York. Our wine ice cream is a direct result of Senator Clinton's. She invented it with us. Our ice cream company makes 36 flavors of ice cream on a regular basis, and they have since 1956. And Senator Clinton invited us to Farm Days in New York in 2004, and we have attended every year since then. While we were there, we were surrounded by wine vineyards and wine people. And we found that we always took vanilla, because you could never make everybody happy. So if you take vanilla, you're safe. And then we ended up with everyone was putting wine on the ice cream. So we were making floats and all sorts of things. So the senator comes over and she said, I don't know why you're monkeying with all of this. Why don't you just make wine ice cream? Then she said to Jim Treesize, who is the director of the Wine and Grape Foundation in Canandaigua, she said, Jim, come over here. I want you to send these people some wine so they can figure out how to make wine ice cream. And that's just what he did. He sent us a case of wine. We spent months developing it. We spent years getting it. New York State Senate and the Assembly had to pass a law to allow us to sell it in New York State, because you have to be 21 to purchase it. We are now selling it in 20. We have shipped ice cream to 20 countries and 22 states. Our story is that we are all woman-owned, and we're just having more fun. It's fun, and it's all because of her. And everywhere we go, she has helped us with promotion. She'll say to, you need to, we went to the International Restaurant Show because she made it possible for 10 businesses to go to the International Restaurant Show. She made it possible. We didn't have to pay for a year or two to get there. We met an international distributor there from Holland. We now have a distributor in Europe who takes complete care of that part of the world for us. We are now getting ready to manufacture ice cream in Canada. because we can't ship dairy to Canada, which is something the federal government can work on. We can also not ship ice cream or anything, dairy, to India, one of the biggest markets in the world. Another thing that we can work on. And I guess that's my story, but Senator Clinton and I have been working together. She's done, her backing and her blessing has made our company known around the world, and it's been a real ride, I'll tell you. It has been a ride.
And it's been so much fun.
It has.
It has been enormous fun. And, well, look, you know, they had the product. It was amazing ice cream. You know, what Mercer's does, I think, has to be one of the top secret formulas for, you know, really producing wonderful ice cream. But then by working together, we were able to help them create this unique product that is now, as you heard, shipped around the world. And I'm always touting it. As Chris knows, you know, I'll text him from somewhere in the world saying, find out if Mercer's is in this market, see what we can do to help. But we have a great agricultural economy in New York. And it's been my hope, and what I worked on as senator, that we could break down barriers, and I made a note about Canada and India, because we can increase our farm production and farm jobs and opportunities, just like we can with advanced manufacturing. One of the things we were talking on the plane on the way up here, Chris and I had the best time, and Lee helped us on this, getting together New York City restaurateurs and food brokers with upstate producers. Agricultural products, dairy products, wine, and we had some of the funniest experiences you can imagine, because you know, a lot of people in New York City before we started had never even been upstate. They thought, you know, I think they thought maybe, you know, Westchester County was upstate. And a lot of the people we met upstate hadn't really ever or spent much time in New York City. So our job was to kind of bridge this gap, to get people to meet together, work together, explore opportunities together. And it was just a joy. We could talk about that for a long time, because there were, you know, a lot of great, hardworking farmers, wine producers, people who wanted to make their product go further than selling it in the local market. And we've really seen a lot of progress, but there's more work to be done. There's a lot more markets, and Make It in America includes, you know, food products that we make in America and then we export around the world, like what Mercer's does as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing wine ice cream in even more places. And if I'm so fortunate as to be elected president, it will be served in the White House, too.
I like that.
We're working on a commemorative ice cream flavor particularly for you.
Ooh, excellent. That's
So,
exciting.
Right.
Well, if you need some taste testers, I'm sure we can arrange that.
no, we're working on, it's being manufactured right now. We're hoping to get Anthony Road to work with us.
Great.
Good choice.
Good choice, yeah.
One of, as Roxy talked about her product, and I told you all you would all roll over and say, what more is there to say after wine ice cream? But one of the benefits of being in the city of Syracuse is you are in a city that has all of the benefits of it in a city, but in 10 minutes you are in rural farmland. And as we have seen the world really crave more food safety and talk about slow food, we have really been the beneficiaries of it. And in fact, later, Hillary is going to go to the Pride and Joy, our farmers market, for a small, not small event. And I have to say, forgive me for this, but as somebody who was raised and grew up in upstate New York, and I go to places like Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they rave about their farmers market, and I walk in and I'm like, this is it? You know, like they have 3 tables, we have, 4 sheds that go on. And so it's a resource that we have, It has only started to be tapped, and I think that Roxy tells a great story, but this is just a great lead-in for you, Lee, to talk about
Oh,
all of the
great.
strength that we have.
Great. Well, you know, I think that President Clinton is going to do for the United States what she's done for New York. Let me just give you an example. For those of you who have not been to New York Farm Days in Washington, held at the Kennedy Caucus Room, I think every year, is that the Kennedy? Yeah. So picture this room that's as big as the largest gymnasium you've ever been in. It's beautiful, gilded ceilings, columns, and all around the room are New York winemakers, clam and oyster producers, fishermen, the cheese people, Roxy with her ice cream. You can have a 15-course meal at this thing. Before that happened, people had absolutely no idea that New York was even an agricultural state. They may have known a little bit about dairy farming, you know, from their kids' books, but they had absolutely no idea of the richness of the agricultural tradition and the products that are being manufactured right here in New York. This person is an advocate. Above everything else in my mind, she has two things. One is she's an advocate, and she is what we call the great convener. So my experience with the secretary comes from the perspective of what's called a Community Development Finance Institution, the CDFI, which essentially are nonprofit alternative lenders. And we play a role, I guess it could be called as an intermediary between sources of capital and small and micro businesses out in the community. So we're not talking about large-scale manufacturing, but often we're talking about those small businesses that are in your supply chain, who are having a tough time getting access to credit and capital. So the convener, the secretary, when she was senator, traveled up to upstate New York, and we had been doing some projects with Chris, and we began talking about this issue of the small farm winery sector in the Finger Lakes, which after all is the engine that drives the Finger Lakes economy, particularly with the closing of large manufacturing facilities around the Finger Lakes. And we couldn't figure out, for the life of us, why they were coming to rural opportunities for loans. And we're a relatively small CDFI. Why in the world are you coming to us? Well, it turns out that the banks in those communities, were not offering the kind of credit and capital products that they needed, not only to start up, but in some cases, a 20-year-old winery couldn't get a line of credit. They had to go to Wisconsin to get a line of credit. Now, how unbelievable is that? So I don't know if you remember this time, but we sat down with a whole bunch of wineries, and she said, okay, wineries, no capital, banks, lots of capital, why aren't you guys talking to each other? And so she helped us convene this whole concept of, guys, get in the same room and talk about this, will you? So it turned out that the banks didn't know the first thing about wineries, and the wineries knew nothing about the banking industry. And they weren't literally talking their own language. So we started a 3-year process, and the secretary was kind enough to help fund this effort, which resulted in a true partnership between the financial institutions and the winery industry. And since then, you've been able to tell, really markedly, a reemergence of the banking sector into the winery industry. As it was, there was one large bank, I won't name names, but they were bought out by another bank, and I won't name their name. And when that transaction happened, all the people who knew about lending to the winery industry, they left. They were gone. There was no skill in terms of winemaking tradition. And so it took 3 years of working with bank leadership and the people who do those small loans to get them to understand exactly the fact that this is a profitable industry, that the future was incredibly bright for them, and they needed to be part of this thing. And so that's just one example of the kinds of convenings, the kind of advocacy that was coming from Senator Clinton. One of the local banks said, we can't do we can't lend money to small vineyards because the OCC is telling us that we have to set up an extraordinary reserve behind every loan to a vineyard or a winery because they're having us consider agriculture. I said, well, you know, there's another way of looking at this. Winemaking is a manufacturing process, actually. And so you or somebody on your staff called the OCC, and they said, this restriction is slowing down the flow of credit and capital to our small farm wineries. And it was really less than 2 months later that the OCC lifted that restriction. And it was things like that that we really, really do appreciate. And so finally, the other thing is, you are such a great advocate when it comes to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I know this is manufacturing, there's a lot of city talk here, but USDA has this whole section called rural development. And at rural development, you have homeownership loans, you have multifamily loans, you have small business loans, you have business and industry loans, infrastructure, community facilities. There's a whole component of USDA which is rural development. It's not just agriculture. You have always been such an advocate for USDA to pay attention to this rural development account, and also to get Congress to pay attention to the fact that, you know, rural communities, particularly those that are isolated, need the kind of intervention that intermediaries like us, using USDA and SBA money and Treasury money, can actually deploy into those small communities. So we appreciate all that you've done, and I've got a whole menu of things that we continue to do. Okay? So thank you so much.
Well, we continue the theme of wine and other great products coming out of New York, but I do want to underscore what Lee said, because in a lot of upstate New York, there was a drying up of credit. And one of the reasons why the organization that Lee runs, which is a lending operation, particularly for rural America, and in this case, rural New York, became so critical is because other avenues were basically blocked. And you looked at that and you thought, this is like a self-defeating process. If we don't get more capital to help businesses grow and produce more jobs, then you're going to have further loss of economic opportunity, and we will get even less capital. So we had to intervene in that line and try to make the case that we have to diversify the rural economy, and there is so much worth investing in. And therefore, we needed people in banks to understand exactly how to evaluate operations like wineries, which was not something they were particularly familiar with in this part of the country. If we'd been in California, be a different issue. Or even with dairy products, been in Wisconsin, even a different issue, because there was deeper knowledge and appreciation of what had to be done. So I loved working with Lee as a senator, because he had a great overview of what was happening in rural New York and what we could do to try to reverse some of the trends, create more job opportunities, attract more businesses. And that's what we've got to do again. And convening is a part of it. Because if you don't get people in the same room, you know, you can rant and rave about people not listening to each other, not working with each other, but somebody's got to get them together and get them to talk to each other. And that's part of how we get results. So thanks, Lee.
And I think results, you've heard over and over again from the folks around this table, that results is what we are all interested in. We all come from our different backgrounds trying to accomplish different things, but the real beauty of New York State is that you exist in these worlds where you have incredible urban environment with rural environment and suburban environment. And so it's I believe, a real test case for how you are able to keep all of these different balls in the air and make sure that you meet the needs of all of them. And I have, Leah, when you talked about small businesses, I have to say, even though I represent a city, I've heard over and over again, both existing side by side, people saying sound bites of, oh, you know, small businesses, how we fuel the economy, and yet doing nothing other than just giving it lip service. And one of the things, too, that I have seen firsthand is when you are in a small business, and with due respect to Christy, who is not in a small business, and we're glad Corning is not small, that, you know, you want to spend your time manufacturing and doing things, and oftentimes you just don't have the skill to figure out, how do I get my products to the marketplace? Because what I'm really good at is plastics molding, injecting, and yet what you need to do is make sure that people know how to get to those and pay for it. And so I know Karen has a great experience of working with small businesses in a beautiful part of our state that the senator helped her with. Karen, if you would share that too.
Thank you very much. I'd like to tell you the story today of my friend Hillary, the problem solver and the visionary, and that is how I look at you. Today, all of these folks talking about problems they had, how you helped to solve those problems. The vision you had of taking wine, who else would have the vision of wine and ice cream? It's a great vision. But there are other visions that you've had. And the one I want to tell you about, it began in Hillary's office, where we were talking about my county and the very rural area of this state. It is the largest county in the state. It is very sparsely populated. We have one town that has a population density of 1.2 people per square mile, if you can imagine that. We have 4 or 5 communities with about 10 to 12,000 people. The rest of it is very sparsely populated. But we have people who make very good products. They make everything from doors to fishing rods, to rugs, pillows, sports bags. They do printing, they do woodworks. And in fact, we even have a manufacturer who makes baby catheters for heart operations for babies, and they are set across the world now. However, we had a problem back about 10 or 12 years ago when we were talking about how do we take these folks who make great products but have no access to a market? Because if your market is 20 miles around you, well, imagine. If you've got 2,800 and some square miles and nobody's around you, where do you sell your product? And so in the conversation with Hillary and with Chris, we were trying to figure out how do we create a market for these individuals. And we realized, I actually personally had a hobby of eBay, where I would go to estate auctions, buy some really neat things and sell them on eBay. And I said, you know, in my hobby, I'm making a pretty good living on this just as a fun thing. And Hillary, the problem solver and the visionary, said, well, why can't we do that for these businesses? And so we sat down to try to figure out, how do you do that? What's needed? And we realized that there were several pieces that were needed. First of all, there was the infrastructure, which is very sparse in rural areas. But there were places that we had some infrastructure. But you needed the technology and the education, and you needed access to capital, which is where my friend Lee came in, who was brought to this project we started, a pilot project with 25 people, convened by Hillary, again, the great convener, who brought together all the pieces. She convinced eBay to come and do an eBay University in St. Lawrence County. Now, keep in mind, eBay University at the time would run universities for 1,000 people or more, but they wouldn't run them for any fewer than 1,000. We brought 25 people to the table. Through her power of persuasion, and it's very powerful, I will say, she was able to convince them to come up, train people on how to sell on eBay and how to do so effectively. She was also able to convince Hewlett-Packard to work with us on this pilot project and provide all of the participants with a laptop computer and a digital camera, and to educate people on how to use those tools. My county Chamber of Commerce, I was the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce at the time, would help work with these folks on a weekly basis to do the training, and we didn't have anyone for the financing, so again, Hillary brought Lee to the table, who was able to find us a bank who would loan $25,000 in small microloans to these businesses so that they could increase their products or hire someone if they needed to, if the sales were there. So we began this project not knowing if it was going to work at all. And I'll never forget the first phone call I got from a woman who said to me, "Oh my God, I sold something in Germany today." And it was like, yeah, great. But it wasn't that she sold something in Germany. It wasn't what happened there is that she opened her mind through this project, and the world was open to her now. So she sold a product, but the world was now hers, and her market was no longer a 20-mile radius. That began a lot of conversation with all the participants, and everybody started working very hard on this project. We actually ended up with an individual who's now gone on to manufacturing drums instead of fly fishing rods. But at the time he was doing fly fishing rods, and he was successful in selling those in Japan and actually getting someone to wholesale for those for him in Sweden. We had individuals who, and still do, who are now selling their products across the world. We have an individual who sells sports bags for some of the best sports teams across the world. And a host of other things, everything from pillows to, we even had a person who made caskets who was part of this program. Since we began it, there have been well over 100 small businesses that have been trained and now doing e-commerce. And e-commerce doesn't sound like much now, but go backward 10 years, 12 years ago when we started this. It was very new and it was very visionary. And thank you for having the vision. And now people are doing very well as a result of that vision. So
No,
again, thank you.
well, Karen, you were such a great leader of that effort, and I think, Chris, you want to tell Karen what you told me on the plane about what you just bought?
I just bought a door, and I had to find. I went online and I found vintage doors, which we created 10 years ago, which is amazing. Just amazing.
And the nice thing about vintage doors and the others is they weren't alone. And we were doing this project, but Hillary came 5 times to meet with these people who were in this pilot project, to keep them going, to encourage them. And that was one. We went to their place, and they have great doors, so you got a wonderful deal.
But I think, we have to stay not just in tune with technology, but ahead of technology, particularly in rural areas, which is one of the reasons why we've got to finish the work of making sure everybody everywhere has access to high-speed internet at an affordable cost. But we've got to use, like the USDA, as you were talking about, Lee, in rural areas, use other sources in cities like Syracuse to make sure everybody's connected. Because in today's economy, if you're not connected, it's really hard to maximize returns on your efforts. And so as we look back and see what we were able to do, 10, 12 years ago, we have to keep asking ourselves, what more can we do? And how do we help even more businesses expand their online presence so that people know that, it's not just reshoring, but you can order from Extreme Molding the kind of baby products that maybe you either can't get or aren't sure of in some other place. Or I remember the story, Karen, of the soap maker.
The soap lady, yeah.
The soap lady, right? She made beautiful bars of soap, and she was one of the people who was put into the eBay experiment. And I think she got a call, if I'm remembering correctly, she got a call from somebody representing Oprah who said she wanted to buy like 40,000 bars of soap. And this poor woman, she had to glitter.
She actually called me in a panic. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And I said, we're going to fix this problem. So she went to her bank, and unfortunately it was one of those banks that it takes you 60 days to get a commercial loan. And it was like, no, we're going to go to a local institution and we're going to convince them to do this. And we were able to do that. So she got the money. She made the 40,000 bars of soap, and she was very happy. What a great success it was for her. She went, by the way, from starting her business with $25, maybe 15, 20 years ago, to over $1 million in sales when she decided to sell the business to someone else. But it's a great story. And on that, I do want to say one other thing. We were talking about small businesses are critical. I teach business now at State University at Canton. And in my courses, I tell them, and this is absolutely true, 75% of all new jobs are created by small businesses. They're created by the soap maker. They're created by the casket maker. They're created by the vintage doors people. So, yes, we're glad that the big companies are there, but our real opportunity is with helping these small businesses. Thank you for doing that.
And I've been saying I want to be a small business president because your statistic is absolutely on the mark. 75% of new jobs. My dad was a small business man, very, very small. But the kind of pride and autonomy that he felt being a small businessman, and that I think we can generate many more opportunities in cities, suburbs, rural areas across America. So keep teaching that course.
So I'd like to now turn over to the pride and joy of Lemoyne College, Chris Balderson.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Senator. The Jesuits taught you to be interdisciplinary, to bring your passion to the business, and I think then Senator Clinton for letting me do this as her Deputy Chief of Staff. And I grew up in a little town, Little Falls, New York, and it's a mill town in the Erie Canal. And I got to bring her back. My father was actually my advance guy, and I told him he had to keep it very quiet. Hillary's coming here for a dining, he's going to visit a diner. We'll meet some of our friends. My father couldn't keep his mouth shut. He was a D-Day vet. We had 3,000 people at the event. He closed the high school, the whole bit. But I think it is very interesting today to listen, and just 3 lessons that I've learned in the years of working with Hillary. Number one, entrepreneurship is not just sitting in the Silicon Valley or Route 128 or Northern Virginia. It is all over the country. It is all over upstate New York. Senator at the time recognized this. We recognize this. You know, and I always love the great Rooseveltian phrase, in the depths of the Depression, let's try bold, persistent experimentation. The senator was never afraid of taking a risk and failing. When you fail, you march on to the other thing. If you succeed, you scale it. And we scaled the Northern Adirondack Trading Co-op to the Finger Lakes. And you received a prize in South Africa, as I remember, by being one of the best commerce. No, I remember you calling me from South Africa. But these are, entrepreneurship exists. The second is what Lee talks about, power to convene, bringing people together around these issues. Partnerships are not just about money. They're about bringing together networks, intellectual property, values. And I think that's something we recognized in creativity. And just the last thing I wanted to mention, Senator, is look at the longevity of the relationships around this table. I mean, we were laughing about all the stories we told. We became friends. And these partnerships and these networks became, helping each other. Lee has been around the country talking to people about Rural Opportunities, Inc., and really building these trusted relationships. I think we try to complicate these things into federal programs, but really the importance is bringing people together, convening them, taking risks, going out there and trying new things, and using these new partnerships for these very complex problems we face. So, as a son of Little Falls and a graduate of Lemoyne College, I appreciate your allowing me to sit at the table.
You've done well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, as Chris mentioned, the Erie Canal, and as the mayor of the city of Syracuse, I would be remiss if I did not reference the Erie Canal to all of the visitors here. The Erie Canal opened up the West, started the Industrial Revolution. It was the start of manufacturing and put our country on the map. So for those of you not from upstate New York, you're welcome. But this is also the part of the world that Alexis de Tocqueville came for his study of democracy in America. We are a group of people who are resilient, and we are used to taking challenges, adapting, and overcoming. And you've, I think, heard today a number of challenges that Hillary was able to be the problem solver for and to work together. And after all, I think, in my very humble opinion, that is her greatest strength, which is her work ethic and her ability to say, let's solve the problem. The rest, leave it. Let's solve the problem so we can adapt and overcome. We in New York State have been the beneficiary of your time in the Senate. We in America have been the beneficiary of your time as Secretary of State, and I'm just thrilled that I have the opportunity to help you become the problem solver for this entire country. So thank you for coming to Syracuse today, and thank you for your work for all of us.
Well, I have to thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Being here today is, very heartwarming and nostalgic for me, because when I started running for the Senate back in 1999, I started in upstate New York. I came to Syracuse and the other communities from literally west to east, and I was so struck by exactly the traits that Stephanie was talking about. The grit, the resilience, the determination, sometimes in the face of great disappointments and injustice that this part of our state and country had seen too much of. Too many people, walking away, walking out. But I'm determined with your leadership and partnership that places like Syracuse and all the other cities and rural area upstate are going to be part of that renaissance. I know we can do this, and the timing is so right because of a lot of the trends that we're seeing both nationally and globally. But we do have to have imagination, and we do have to take some risks. You know, the mayor mentioned the Erie Canal. That was the idea of the longest-serving governor in New York State history, DeWitt Clinton. And
Well played.
it was called Clinton's Folly. Everybody thought it was a terrible idea, but look what it did. And it did not only link New York City with Buffalo and all the places along the route, but as Stephanie said, it opened up our country to commerce. It paved the way for the Industrial Revolution and the incredible economic prosperity that lifted so many tens of millions of Americans and gave their children even better opportunities. So my goal in this campaign, and then as your president, if I am so fortunate, is to lift our sights again. Imagine the tomorrow that we can create together. And this is not a partisan issue, this is about problem solving. And anybody with a good idea, come to the table and help us figure out how we're going to realize the promise of America in the lives of every American. So I'm really excited about what I've heard today, just as I have been over the years in every conversation we've ever had here. And I pledge to you that I am going to keep laying out what I want to do, telling you very specifically what I believe will work, enlisting your help, and then asking you to hold me accountable because, you know, as Chris rightly said, we need bold, persistent experimentation. If you fail, keep going. If you succeed, scale it so that more people have the opportunity to realize their own full potential. So, Mayor, thank you for having us here. Thank this great school for hosting us. And thank all of our panelists and those they represent for coming here and giving us such encouragement to keep doing what we know will make it in America. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. It's been a privilege.
That's great. You guys say hey. Yeah.
Thanks for standing up for